Welcome to our 2024 Global Rally Summit. I'm Margaret Young, Chair of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People. Since the launch of Age Rights Campaign in 2021 and the first global rally in 2022, I have witnessed the growing impact of our advocacy efforts in face of socio-economic, national, and intergovernmental uncertainties and challenges. I hold deep admiration for the commitment and unwavering stance of our longtime advocates and supporters. And I'm grateful for the perspectives and energies of new advocates and supporters who joined us in the movement in recent years. I thank you all. Today, about 4 weeks before the 14th session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, we have the opportunity to hear from and engage with individuals who deeply care about the human rights of older people and hear what they have to say about a UN convention. So I see that some of us is already, as we join into this session today, have put their names, organization, and where they're from into the chat. So please continue to do that. That would be really helpful to know and get to know one another. And then for any Q&A questions or any questions for a Q&A period, if you can help us by putting it into the question and answer box within the Zoom platform, that'd be really great. And as you might notice, we actually have 3 interpreters today with us. Our French interpreter, our Spanish interpreter, as well as the sign language interpreters. And those can be accessed through the globe icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We are recording today's sessions for those of us who cannot join us today, and we are live streaming on Facebook today. So in terms of the flow of the session, we will start with our 3 civil society campaigners, then invite Ambassador Malova of Slovenia to the floor, followed by a 25 to 30 minute Q&A session. C, could you help us unmute any participant who might not be able to access the technology? Thank you. As we near the close of the session, we will watch a video and hear from Deputy High Commissioner of Human Rights, Al Nashif, and then we'll close with brief remarks from me. I now have the pleasure of inviting our civil society campaigners. Our first campaigner is Amazaran Dazuran from Mongolia, Center of Human Rights and Development. Could we promote Amazaran to the screen? Thank you.
Can I start? Good day to all participants. My name is Amazaran Dazuran from Mongolia. I represent Center for Human Rights and Development, a national NGO. I'm very delighted to speak today and share with you some of my thoughts regarding older people in my country. The foremost issue expressed by the majority of older people is their economic insecurity, affecting their right to live in dignity, the right to social protection, the right to adequate standard of living, to participate, to access healthcare, and many other human rights. While we have an almost universal pension scheme, 70% of all pensioners receive the lowest level of pension. Currently, it's roughly equivalent to about $170 US. This is about 2.7 times less than the average salary. And there are further gender and social economic inequities. Older women, for example, receive lower pensions than older men, and herders receive the lowest pensions. In the 1992 survey conducted by our National Human Rights Commission, 92% of older people say their pension is low. 1 in 2 say they cannot meet their basic needs, and many say it's hard to get their medicine. Despite their financial distress, the majority of older persons continue to support their adult children and grandchildren. They do so through so-called pension loans, sometimes willingly and sometimes pressured. In either case, they bear the burden of high interest payments and repaying the loan. One older person shared, quote, "We cannot fully enjoy our human rights. We cannot use the pension loans on ourselves. There are elders who gave their dwellings to children and left with no place to go. These people have to reside with children. End of quote. These scenarios speak not only to financial abuse, but ageism and age discrimination, where the needs of older members are often less regarded, while the needs of younger members are prioritized. Despite our constitutional guarantee for material and financial support in old age, the law on older persons, the provisions in the law on social protection, social insurance, and social welfare, a legal reform is needed to enhance the social protections of older persons, particularly take into account diverse groups among us. The UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons that takes a holistic and integrated approach to human rights in older age will therefore fortify that older people are in fact right holders and provide the standards needed to guide the law and policy making and to close the human rights protection gaps I talked about earlier. The need for such an instrument is brought up in the fourth global review of the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging and concluded in several reports and studies by the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights. In advocating for a convention, our NGO have increased the number of older persons and of human rights civil society organizations who are now aware of the need for a new convention and are actively working in rural and urban communities. We are also campaigning to sign the global petition asking younger and older people to sign. We are working with our National Human Rights Commission on joint advocacy with the government. The list of human rights concerns affecting present generation of older persons is actually quite long. But there is a greater need and growing need to prevent the violations of human rights for the sake of future generations, and in other words, for the current younger generations as they age. So we urge the member states to start developing a new convention in order to protect the human rights of older people. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Amansana, for the wonderful, impassioned intervention and for making real.
Apasionada y por darnos ejemplos reales.
Sorry, I think if the audience can be on mute.
Por favor, podemos apagar nuestros micrófonos.
Or, sorry, is it our interpreter? Oh, okay. Sorry about the interruption, Amansana. I just wanted to say that thank you so much for your making real the social protection inequities that's faced by older Mongolians and the inter alia human rights gap, for sharing examples of how we champion and promote the rights of older people, and for calling on the UN Convention. Thank you so much for that. It's really wonderful. We would now like to invite to the floor Vijay Naradu. Could we switch our screen? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret. Greetings
Vijay,
from Mauritius. I am Vijay Naraidu, lead person of the Commission for the Rights of Older Persons in NGO DIMOA, which stands for Droits Humains Océan Indien. The right to work is enshrined in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. It includes the right of everyone to the opportunity to earn a living by work, which he freely chooses or accepts, and the state should be taking appropriate steps to safeguard this right. However, older people experience a different reality. They either do not get access to work opportunities, or they are not paid on an equal basis with others despite the same qualifications. Age discrimination and ageism underpin these inequities, and the inequities are magnified when there are multi-forms of discrimination on the basis of gender and ability. This is confirmed in the follow-up of the focus area at the 11th Working Group discussion on normative input. I quote, on the focus area of right to work and access to the labor market, it was highlighted that the lack of older persons' specific standards represented a major gap in the current legal and policy frameworks at the national and international levels. What is to be done, we ask ourselves. Member states should be adopting a convention for the rights of older persons that would be binding and provide the human rights standards needed to redress human rights protection gaps and guide policy and law, making inter alia right to work in older age discrimination and ageism, gender age pay gaps, social protection for all, recognition of unpaid care work performed by women, favorable opportunities for older entrepreneurs, access to training and capacity building, and access to prompt remedies when the rights are denied. In Mauritius, GMO, what we have been doing, we have been undertaking a multi-pronged approach in our campaign in favor of the convention. We have outreached all the people within the senior citizens associations, younger adults through in-house and face-to-face, online and face-to-face training sessions, secondary school and tertiary students with human rights clubs, new recruits of police officers with a specific module on the rights of older persons, parishes through talks, radio, TV stations, and social media. And week after week, we have 2-page, free of charge, in the best-selling newspaper in the country, daily in the country, with articles on human rights, and we regularly put in articles in favor of the Convention for the Rights of Older Persons. We have been lobbying with line ministries, like for example, the Ministry of Social Security and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Lately, we have had meeting with both ministries, and we have obtained from them the intention of government to speak in favor of the convention at the forthcoming 14th session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. Similarly, we have been talking with the chairperson of the Mauritius National Human Rights Commission, and again, here too, we have obtained that the commitment of the Commission to speak in favor of the convention. Now, what have we been doing? So in parallel, we have been holding multi-stakeholders meeting year after year with organizations of human rights, National Human Rights Commission, Senior Citizens Council, workers, trade unions, fellow human rights NGOs, educators, and the media people. Now, we then submit the conclusion of these multi-stakeholder meetings to government. What is our request, earnest request? We call upon member states to actively participate in the 14th UN session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, to be vocal, to speak, and to take position. To member states who have supported the advent of the convention in the past, to go and reiterate their intention. And to member states who have been deliberating, well, voice your support in this session. To conclude, I'm going to say it is time to start drafting a convention for the rights of older persons. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for honing in on how a convention will address the different aspects of protection gaps on the right to work, for sharing and inspiring us with the various campaign activities that you and others do in Mauritius and the Indian Ocean Islands, and for the call out to member states relative to the 14th session that's upcoming, and to start drafting now. Thank you so much. I now invite to the floor Sophia Casal from the NGO Committee on Aging in Geneva. Sophia?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Sophia Casal. I reside in America, work in a sector of long-term care called assisted living, and I'm affiliated with the NGO Committee on Aging Geneva, as well as Grey Panthers NYC. It is my honor to be here with you to speak about how the rights of older persons must be ensured, particularly for those residing in residential long-term care. In recent years, the U.S. has witnessed an increase in abuse and neglect cases towards older persons, mainly attributed to our ongoing direct care staff shortage. National statistics reveal 1 in 6 older Americans living in long-term care facilities suffers some form of mistreatment at the hands of formal caregivers. Now, this statistic likely underestimates the true extent of the situation, as many victims fear retaliation for speaking out against their abusers. Compounding this reality at the system level is a lack of geriatric training for healthcare professionals and an institutionalized model that prioritizes an older person's medical needs, but seldom considers their wants and desires. For older Americans living in long-term care, their right to be freed from violence, right to quality and participatory care, and the right to autonomy are either violated or not fulfilled and protected. However, what I see is not isolated to the US. In the 2019 Open-Ended Working Group on Aging session, substantive inputs in the form of normative content on long-term care affirmed the right to long-term care. There were also broad agreements that long-term care facilities should ensure older persons' enjoyment of their right to autonomy and independence by providing support that takes their will and preferences into account. These and other significant protection gaps are reiterated in the 2022 OHCHR report on normative elements. This report urges the development of a coherent, comprehensive, and integrated human rights framework for older persons. Therefore, we need a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, and we can all contribute to this goal in our own way. For instance, I advocate for a UN Convention by speaking today. I have contributed to Garib's Age with Rights video campaign and signed the global petition. Through my work with the NGO Committee on Aging, Geneva, I educate young professionals on the need for a convention, and I advocate nationally for long-term care transformation with Grey Panthers NYC. Though my advocacy extends far beyond these formal settings to my everyday interactions with older persons at the assisted living where I work. I ensure their autonomy, independence, dignity, and respect are upheld in every interaction we have. And I'd actually like to share my most cherished compliment from a resident. It's my most cherished compliment as an advocate. And this resilient resident once told me, "You make me feel safe." And she followed by saying, "Because you listen, because you care, because you just make me feel like a human in here." Now I ask all governments globally, how will you make older persons in your country feel safe? How will you listen and demonstrate you care? How will you ensure older persons feel human and have their full enjoyment of their human rights? I encourage you to please support a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. And to civil society, please do continue your essential advocacy as well and partake in Garib's global petition. Remember, we are all campaigning for older persons today and older persons tomorrow, like myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia, for sharing the human rights gap that you witness and what you do about them, and your calls to action for member states and civil society. Thank you for that. It's now a great pleasure that I invite to the floor Ambassador Bastian Malova, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Slovenia to the United Nations in New York. Ambassador Malova, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young, and good day to all. Let me start by thanking the Global Alliance for organizing today's event. Such an important topic in the preparation for the fourth session of the Open-Ended Working Group. It's going to take place here in New York at the end of May. We appreciate and support the work of the civil society organizations on this topic, and we are also grateful for very many useful inputs, documents, and analysis which address the issues of the protection of the rights of the older persons. We welcome your campaign, The Age with Rights, for a new UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, which also contributes to the public awareness of the importance and the need for the new convention. Older persons are entitled to the same human rights as everybody else, yet older persons experience a number of challenges when it comes to the full realization and enjoyment of the human rights. The rapid demographic changes will double the percentage of older persons by 2050, so we believe this issue should no longer be neglected. For over decades, Slovenia has been actively contributing to the debate on the human rights of the older persons and has been striving for a stronger protection of the human rights also at the global level. The protection of human rights of all, regardless of age, is essential to the development and the quality of life in any country. We have been actively engaged on the issue of the rights of the older persons here in New York within the open-ended working group, as well as in Geneva between 2013 and 2022. We were a member of the open-ended working group bureau. In Geneva, Slovenia took part in the core group that tabled several resolutions on the human rights of older persons in the Human Rights Council. Slovenia also co-chairs the group of Friends of the Rights of Older Persons in Geneva, and we are also members of the group of Friends here in New York. Our engagement on the topic is multifold. We are trying to extract best practices, find best solutions for addressing our own aging population, but at the same time, setting also ambitious goal, which includes improving international framework for protection of the rights of the older persons. Our decade-long discussion in the open-ended working group have provided evidence of the existing gaps in the protection of the rights and dignity of older persons, which present an impediment to the full enjoyment of their human rights. Now, Slovenia clearly sees the need to better implement existing norms and standards, but at the same time, we also see an urgent need to upgrade international legal framework. We believe that further codification of human rights of older persons is indeed needed. We believe that gaps in the legal protection of older persons would be best addressed through a comprehensive internationally legally binding instrument for the promotion and protection of the rights and dignity of older persons. Such a treaty developed in an intergovernmental setting within the UN with broad participation of all stakeholders and devoted specifically to older persons would not only guarantee the promotion and protection of their human rights, but also increase the visibility of this issue, often overlooked social group. We see the need to develop a legally binding instrument that both takes into account current democratic trends and also provides guidance on how to deal with demographic challenges and changes due to rapid population aging. Now, I would like to say a few words on other existing mechanisms. We in Slovenia strongly support the work and the mandate of the open-ended working group and of the independent experts, and also within the UN and elsewhere. We advocate for policies that perceive older persons as human rights holders. We also see the important role of other human rights mechanisms such as Human Rights Council, special procedures and practices of treaty bodies, which do not impose legally binding obligations, but nevertheless play an important role in advocacy for the human rights of older persons. Slovenia regularly participates in the interactive dialogues with the independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons, both within the framework of the Human Rights Council and here at the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly in New York. In November 2014, Slovenia was the first country visited by the independent expert. In 2016, Slovenia hosted an international conference on aging titled The Rights for Empowerment. We regularly participate in the Universal Periodical Review of the UN Human Rights Council, which provides an opportunity for questions and recommendations to states on measures to combat ageism and age-based discrimination, and also to protect the human rights of older persons. In its reporting to treaty bodies, in our reporting to the treaty bodies, we regularly highlight the importance of ensuring the human rights of older persons, which is reflected also in the progress at our national level. Now, just to conclude, we are approaching this year's meeting of the open-ended working group. As you know, the group adopted a decision last year requesting the co-facilitators to facilitate the consideration on the existing international framework of the human rights of older persons and the identification of possible gaps in the protection and of course how to best address them. We expect to start the negotiations on the recommendation document as soon as possible, and we hope that this will also bring a step towards the international legally binding document in the future. I'll put a stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Malova. It's really gratifying for civil society, for your leadership, Slovenia's leadership on human rights of older person, promoting it, protecting it in various forums, as you outlined, be it in New York, be it in Geneva, with the treaty bodies, the open-ended group, and different forums. It's really gratifying for us to see and to hear from you today. We, I encourage colleagues or to pop your questions into the Q&A. I see that there is already one question in there, and perhaps I can pose this question to Ambassador Malova. And the question is, what, according to you, need to a role of international institutions like UN and WHO in improvement of social economic well-being of older persons from poor and low socioeconomic groups of population, including poor developing countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Welcome any comments that you have for us. Thank you, Ambassador.
Okay, so if I correctly understood the question, so it's about how to particularly address the issue in the in the sort of developing countries. Is this correct?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned before, and also that's this issue is linked to not only to the normative gaps, that I maybe didn't go much into this, but it's also a really relevant issue, and it's an economic issue as well. So I'm not really sure if I answer the question in a few words.
Yes, you did mention, I think it's overarching universal legal binding instrument that looks at, globally how we can do that, and that covers all our different populations in different countries, I believe. Yes, thank you. Another question for you, Ambassador. And the question is there a draft from the co-facilitators yet? Referring to the decision of the intersession negotiated recommendations between the 13th and 14th session about the gaps and recommendation on what to do next. And then how is it possible for civil society to see it? And then there's also a second part, pardon me, that asks how do you think is the best way to convince other member states who are not yet supporting a convention? And what are their reasons? So two-part question. Thank you.
Okay. So first, we haven't seen the draft yet. The Slovenian delegation, and that's a short answer. So the second, how to persuade others. I think we need to talk about other countries. So we have spoken to a number of countries here in New York. I think at least from our Eastern European group or the Western European group, there's some question of their national legislation that somehow needs to address this issue. Perhaps on the normative gaps, that's something that I didn't address before. Which are the normative gaps in the international legal framework that needs to be addressed? So one is the age-based discrimination, the neglect and abuse of older persons, the limitation in the participation of older persons and other older persons' rights to healthcare, long-term care, palliative services. So these are the issues that we need to discuss with countries that still need to be brought on board. So I think through the substantive discussions rather than just presenting them with the fait accompli document. I think this is the way to proceed. And the role of the civil society in each of these countries is very, very important to help us to put emphasis, if not pressure, to the governments to start thinking on it and joining us on this quest for the international legally binding document.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting the role that we need to play as civil society to continue to put that pressure onto our respective governments to participate and really look at the substantive issues as you highlighted. Thank you. Let me see. There's a couple of other questions in our Q&A box. I believe, four more questions. There's a question, and I think this could be open to a couple of our panelists. Maybe first our ambassador, and then maybe on to Amasara. So this first question is, do you think the ruling brought by older women in Switzerland on human rights and older persons can help our long-term goal? And this is referring to the climate change ruling that took place at the European Human Rights Court. So maybe I see Amasara is on the screen. So yeah, so particular to that, any comments relative to that on older women? Oh, sorry, Amasara, could you turn on your mic? Thank you. Oh, sorry, your mic is still somehow not on.
It's okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry about it.
No, not at all.
Yes, indeed. I think this is an important question, although I'm not familiar with this particular ruling of the European Court, but I think it's important to see the diversity among the older persons. And we have all the, for instance, gender, differentiated impact of old age on us. We see it. And of course, to my knowledge, there are several references in international human rights instruments with regards to older populations. So I have researched and advocated for gender-specific issues affecting older women. We focus on the CEDAW Convention and its General Recommendation 27, which highlights the rights of older women and urges governments to fulfill their human rights obligations to this particular group of women. However, the reports of state parties often do not include the discrimination faced by older women. And this is happening for various reasons. And one is the lack of the disaggregated data for this age group. It is important also to know that for CEDAW Convention, which talks in the General Recommendation 25, it recognizes age as one of the factors and significant factor contributing to discrimination against women, and therefore it stresses the importance of collecting statistical data disaggregated by age and sex, to better understand the actual situation of older women in each country. And this, I believe, will be also helpful to see how climate change, for instance, or natural disaster or any other crisis situations may affect the different age groups of women and men. So ending discrimination against older women is crucial, therefore, for upholding their dignity, autonomy, and right to independent living. And then we understand that the challenges to us, such as lifelong gender-based discrimination, leads to an old age economic dependency, lack of social security, and older age women gender-based violence, such as economic form of violence experienced by older women, or financial exploitation of older women, as well as the exploitation in form of significant amounts of unpaid care work performed by older women. Of course, indeed, these issues also affecting older men and other genders, and therefore, the CEDAW Convention alone is not enough to address all issues of age discrimination, and therefore I'm saying that the existing instruments, human rights mechanisms, and are not enough. And because the new convention, Tokyo on Older People, will provide this normative elaboration of ageism as a widespread cultural norm and stereotype behaviors that affect older persons, dignity, and rights. Therefore, this new convention, I actually believe that specifically targets ageism and would be beneficial for age-inclusive policymaking on substantive areas of human rights. So it will be a guidance for us. And of course, we need to promote disaggregated data collection and analysis beyond the age of currently, 65 and it will enhance really evidence-based policymaking in various areas of life. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. Really great to look specifically at one of our older populations and kind of dive into that. And thank you for the question that sparked that conversation. I see there's a follow-up question for Ambassador Malova. The question says, why is a convention on the rights of older persons not the same as other conventions that the government have supported? So I think maybe beneath that question is why perhaps the momentum doesn't seem to be as readily evident for support, if I can interpret it that way. Perhaps not.
Thank you. I'll try to answer that. I think on the specific issue of the convention that we are talking about, the new convention that we're talking about, there's a number of national legislations, at least in some cases that I know, I'm not an expert, sort of countries believe that their national legislation already sufficiently covers their this issue, so and they lack the motivation or the need to go with international legally binding instrument that would somehow cover this issue, or again, in their view. So we don't share that view, of course, but I think it's the main thing is that it's a national. Some of the reservations are linked to their national existing legislation, and then there's somehow the resistance to change that, so to adopt it or to align it with a new international convention. But now that's also a partial answer. We have 193 countries in the world. I think we see things differently sometimes, and it takes time, but I think we'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question from the audience is, how many countries are on board with the idea of the convention? Who are the leaders and adopters? So for sure, Slovenia has been one of our strongest champions. Thank you for that. Any comments on that, Ambassador?
We're working on bringing on as many countries as possible, but we'll see in May where we are. So it's difficult for me to comment now on how many countries are actually on board. So we received strong support by the countries of the group, or within the group of friends, obviously, but we're trying to expand this, so I'm afraid I don't have a more specific answer at this point.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. So just from a civil society perspectives, what we have tried to do is to listen to the conversations or deliberations at either open-ended working group on aging during the opening statements or in the Human Rights Council statements. And between 2023 to 2022 to now, what we have kind of counted is about maybe 60 member states. So who have made a statement, who said that they have support. Now we do have lots who haven't said vocally, and I think that's why Vijay said in his intervention, like, please affirm your support or identify. So the next question is a little bit more broad to any of our panelists. And the question is, do the panelists agree that ultimately all aspects of environmental degradation need to be linked to human rights issues for the elderly? And should that be included in the draft of a convention? So environmental degradation. So I think that means the environmental elements that affect the older person, and that could be social, economic, cultural discrimination, different aspects. I think this is what our colleague here is referring to. So maybe we'll start with our ambassador, and then we'll go to each of the panelists to see what they think.
So for purely Slovenian national position, so we have always advocated I mean, we have passed a resolution in the Human Rights Council, and we are part of the group of countries that passed a resolution on the right to healthy and clean environment, so as a human right. So if I make a link to that, we had this in Geneva and also at the GA last year. So this issue should definitely be involved, included also in the declaration, but again, I don't have more specifics on this.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Vijay, would you like to respond to that question?
Older people are they are among the most vulnerable group of the population. So any climate phenomenon will have an impact on the people, the most so on people who are vulnerable and in the poorer section of the community. I would like here to attract the attention of Shmuel, who was asking how would the UN or the WHO endeavor to address that problem of the poorer section of the population to improve the socio-economic situation. Now, we know that we have got the Sustainable Development Goals, and years back, countries have committed they have made the commitments in terms of education, in terms of access to education, in terms of food security, in terms of environmental protection, and so on and so forth. Now, if these countries are, endeavoring in respect of the commitment that they have taken, they will have to, year after year, assess how far they have been able to reach their goals. If ever they are on the right track, they will continue. Otherwise, they will have to review their strategy in order to see that to see whether they are in fact addressing that question of poorer section of the population. Now, why I don't see how the environmental degradation needs to be linked in within the draft of the convention, because particularly for the older people, yes, we can mention that because they will be affected by housing, food security, and so on and so forth. So if there's a link between environmental degradation and impoverishing the more poorer people, then I think we should include somewhere a kind of constraint binding upon member states with regards to protection of the rights of older persons. I don't know if I have answered the question for Shmuel, but we are open for discussion on this issue.
Thank you. And perhaps we can hear from Amazara in terms of the same question, which is how government and authorities of Mongolia try to protect the social and economic rights of older people in your country.
Thank you very much for question, Shmuel Yerushalmi. Yes, there is a number of measures. Of course, it's not that it doesn't exist in social protection of older peoples. We do have a pension in old age, and also some medical insurance available for older people, and some things like free public transportation in cities, and quite a number of other measures to support the older people health and enable them to survive in this situation. So as I said, the pension is actually almost universal. So it's, I think the people, 99% of people, of older people do receive one sort or another sort of pension. It could be from insurance or could be from other like social welfare funds. So that is, I think the issue is that it's too low to meet the needs because of overall economic situation. And of course, there are measures that government is trying to implement in the through the policies and programs So we only need to improve. I think for that, we need to increase the awareness and empower all the people themselves in their communities to engage in meaningful dialogue, so their views will be really taken into account by the policymakers. I think that is where we also need to put our strength for all the people.
Thank
I
you.
think that's, is it enough for you, Shmuel Yerushalmi?
Okay, I think perhaps we are good for now on that question, and then if there's anything follow up relative to that question, please pop it into the Q&A box. The next is both a comment and a question. So conventions always consider the status quo in order to look at the legal situations and gap from the standpoint. Do we not have to be forward-looking, because there's also legal development and thus the development of rights? As the recent judgment of Tuesday in Strasbourg at the European Court of Justice shows, do we not need to start afresh here in order to persuade the states that are undecided to develop a new form of convention? And I think it's CRDP, I'm not sure if it's CROP. CRDP could be the litmus test. And then maybe, Jürgen, if you can help us with the decision on the at Strasbourg, could you just expand a bit on that? Sorry, or maybe as Jürgen kind of expand on that what the decision was. Sorry, maybe I missed it and was sort of following. Then we can kind of come back to that question. That'll be helpful. The next question, as a follow-up to the question on how many member states are in support of the convention, how many countries are not for the convention? Okay, and can we, as GARUP, work through our NGO members to start individualized targeted negotiations and responsible government representatives of those member states to ensure support for the convention? Thank you. And that's a great question. So if I recall correctly, there are 193 member states. So if we assume we're at 60 at this point, and we'll continue to work on that through the upcoming session, that's kind of the difference that we need to look at. And at GARUP, we do have a couple of mechanisms, more than a couple. So we have a national advocacy group where we discuss and share like what we're doing relative to national advocacy to help support one another. And from the basis in terms of targeted discussion with our respective governments. And then out of that, what we do is any tools and resources that we need to support advocacy. And I think in the past, we've seen different tools, be it webinars or letters, templates, and whatnot targeted to a government. So I think that is some of the quick highlights of what GARUP members have been doing, really sharing with each other and finding ways to move forward with our respective governments. And we welcome any additional ideas in terms of needs or ways to kind of approach that. That would be really great. So let's see. I don't seem to see further from Jürgen, sorry, in terms of the Tuesday Strasbourg decision. So I'll wait that. So meanwhile, I do, have I missed any other questions? Let me see. I do have a few questions myself, but let me see. To Sophia, there's a question. I see. Do you have any suggestions on how we can engage more younger people like yourself in promoting the rights of older persons? So perhaps we can bring Sophia to the floor and help us with that question. Thank you.
Well, thank you for my opinion, or asking my opinion on this. So I have actually been working to expand the network of advocates for the rights of older persons to include younger persons through my role with the NGO Committee on Aging Geneva. As a member at large, a young career professional member, and I have actually been working to create a video campaign or a video that stresses the importance of a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons today and in the future. So really the idea of this is to spread the message to others, and the goal is to bring unique perspectives to the UN, voices and perspectives, I should say, to the UN, all of course to advocate for a convention on the rights of older persons. But Vijay kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, where he said that older persons and younger persons tend to or need to come together directly in their community, and I tend to agree. And he's actively doing that in his country. But I think we need to have more of these intergenerational connections or collaborations and relationships globally. And so one way that younger persons can at least put a name and a face to the people that they're advocating for is to volunteer their time or their talents to, let's say, a local long-term care facility or local organizations that promote social congregation. Here in America, we have senior centers, but maybe something similar in other countries, because in the US, at least from what I see, is families are very spread apart. And so we don't have those intergenerational connections or relationships built into our family system. And this is also widespread too throughout the globe, where younger generations tend to leave communities that maybe aren't thriving or who are struggling a bit more and leaving older generations behind. So I think it's important to have this exposure to the people that you're advocating for. And then GARUP always has wonderful ideas for campaigns. And so, you know, younger persons can contribute their talents or their ideas through a GARUP Age with Rights campaign idea that GARUP has. But I really do think it's important that we get younger persons to be exposed to older persons and have that name and that face to the people that they're advocating for. Because personally, I speak and I advocate for my residents because many of them can't advocate for themselves in the environment that they're in. And many of them have gone through hardships that nobody should ever have to go through, you know, and they have experienced experiences that much of what I've talked about earlier today. You know, but I also advocate for my parents and my aunts and my uncles, my sister, my cousins, friends, colleagues, so many more, because they most likely will grow older, and they're going to grow older in a world that their right or their, well, I guess their rights or for a happy and healthy older adulthood aren't protected or guaranteed. So kind of what I'm trying to say is we really need to expose younger persons to older persons and have them understand that this reality could be theirs too, and it could affect their family and their loved ones. And so it is important, in my opinion, to not only be exposed, younger generations be exposed to older persons in their community, but also for those young professionals who are interested in advocating and speaking at the UN to join us with the NGO Committee on Aging Geneva. So thank you very much for this question. I hope that answers.
Thank you, Sophia, for sharing your perspective. That's really great, and we're very happy that you're here with us today. So Jürgen kind of popped into the Q&A, the kind of expansion on the decision that was made at the European Justice Court. And I think what's really important here, once again, I think Jürgen's pointing out the opportunity to look at some of these new evidence in terms of looking at how we approach the convention. So really thank you for that. And I think as we would have the opportunity perhaps in our national advocacy group or in other forums to kind of further discuss and to see how we can take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you for that. So next we see that Vijay has his hand up. So Vijay, perhaps you have a comment for us? Is that the case?
Thank you, Margaret. With regards to involvement of younger people, in practice, we are doing it since a long time now by training students in secondary schools, by putting up human rights clubs, which are open to the students. We have been to the university because they are young people, and then we outreach people who are out of school. They have left school, but they are young, and we get them on board. Now we get them to write articles. We get them to listen to our radio programs. We get them to interpret, to be present in the media. So one way of making that philosophy of human rights, of convention of the rights of older persons, is to get the younger people to bring the message from the point of manufacture to the point of consumption by the population. So it's like teachers, I've said it before, it's like when teachers say something to students, they go home and the parents believe in what the teachers have been saying. So this is what we have been doing. We have got a whole year program this year, from now on to 25, involving younger people in all our activities. So this is one way, because we are an aging population. Those who have been here campaigning, they are becoming old, so we need to fill the gap, and we need younger people to take over. This is of utmost importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you very much. Amazana, you have your hands up. You want to make a comment? Please unmute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think Sophia and Vijay just talked about the engagement of younger people in the advocacy for all the persons' rights. And we also, I think I fully agree with this, and the really good strategies what they are doing. But also, from my perspective, we're also engaging with the younger people who are working already in the civil society for human rights, and also the national human rights institutions. They're also, all of them are younger people than we, and we ask them to engage in this issue and use their own mandate. For instance, in National Human Rights Institution of Mongolia, it's all younger people, and then I approached them and talked to them. It's not that they are not aware of this, they are aware. They did, like National Commission did a study last year, couple of years, a survey on all the peoples. They did a monitoring mission to the elderly care institutions. But the fact is, overall, it's not a big issue for them, not a priority issue in their agenda. So our role as an older people's organization to ask them and inspire them to start working on it. So I've been reaching to our commissioner and telling them that there is an international process is ongoing. So they were not aware. So now they, after these approaches and joint advocacy with the National Human Rights Commission, they are now have already made plans to already attend the open-ended working group and join the national institutions in Asia-Pacific Forum, as well as Global Alliance of Human Rights Institutions. So we are seeing them as a strategic partner to push for this agenda. And of course, the civil society groups, we have many civil society of younger people who are working on their own issues. They also see their own marginalization in policy making, but then we need to join hands on this. And coming from the Asia-Pacific women's rights movement, I would like to say we also, I must admit, there is no so much attention to all the women's rights, and we are now trying to work on it to improve the intergenerational dialogue among us and build the solidarity. I think we have a lot of things to do by from our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that last round of conversation, because it really shows how all generations is part of this age of rights and for the Convention of Older Persons, because it is a life course, right, in terms of our human rights. And it's really wonderful that we have older advocates like yourselves to bring on and kind of share the need of why to the younger generation. And we have younger generations who wants to know and who are passionate also about it. So it's very gratifying. So I think at this point, what I'd like to do is to thank our panelists once again for your generosity in sharing and for the thought-provoking conversations. And at this time, what we'd like to do is to share a video message from the Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights, Nada Al-Nashif, pardon me. So we'll just get that video message ready. And C, could we restart the video and put on the sound? There's no sound currently. I think when we play the video, we need to just click the, I think on Zoom there's a button that says share sound, because we're not able to hear the sound being broadcast. Thank you.
Forward to 2050, and we'll see these numbers rise to 1.6 billion, or 1 in every 6 people. As our lifelines extend, so are the challenges. Inequalities are deepening, our social systems are failing to keep up, leaving millions behind, notably women in the developing world. We're at a critical point. We must put the rights and well-being of older people at the center of policies for a sustainable future. And we need to invest in inclusive support systems so that everyone, no matter their gender, their life stage or ability, can age with dignity and purpose. I urge governments around the world to rally behind a legally binding instrument on the rights of older persons.
Thank you to Deputy High Commissioner Al-Nashif for her energizing and affirming remarks, as were those of our panelists today. As we rally forward, please know that our strength is our joint belief and conviction, and that as we forge ahead, more will join the movement. Our solidarity and diversity will bring about the full enjoyment of human rights by older people and the UN Convention. I'm confident of that. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our interpreters, C and Ellen, for their fantastic work and support on today's summit event and throughout the Global Rally Week. I'll conclude by saying that everyone has the opportunity and the need to play a role in promoting the human rights of the person, and toward a UN Convention. And one of the ways has been highlighted multiple times today, and I'll say it again, because in the rallies I've been in this week, I've been putting out the challenge of, if we can, individually support and sign a convention and ascend it onto 20 and others, can we imagine the multiplying effect in our respective countries? So please do that. And I wish everyone well. Thank you again for being here today. And I look forward to a great session together for OEWG 14. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you for this opportunity. Enjoy, everyone.